It's 7:45 in the morning. You pull into the parking lot. You find a spot near the back. You turn off the engine, and you sit there for a second, the way you always do. The guy next to you steps out of a leased BMW. He straightens his jacket. He doesn't look at your car, but the woman walking past does. Just for a second. Just long enough. You notice, you don't move, because you know something she doesn't. And that's exactly where this story starts. The car is a 2008 Toyota Corolla. You bought it off Craigslist for $3,800 cash. The guy who sold it shook your hand twice, like he couldn't believe someone actually showed up with the money. The back seat has a tear in it. You cover it with an old jacket, not because you care how it looks, because the foam underneath digs into people's backs. Nobody sits there much anyway. Your apartment is 20 minutes from work. 2 roommates. A kitchen that smells like someone else's cooking at 9 p.m. You pay $640 a month for a room with a window that faces a brick wall. You take home $2,130 a month. After rent, after utilities, after the student loan minimum, you have maybe $400 left. Sometimes $300. Once it was $92. And you remember that specific number because you checked it on a Tuesday night sitting on the edge of your bed. $92. 11 days until payday. You didn't panic, you just got very still. You open a brokerage account that month, not because you have extra money, because you read something that said the best time to start is when you think you can't afford to. You put in $50, you set an automatic transfer, $100 a month, payday to brokerage, before you can see it, before you can talk yourself out of it. The first month it processes, your account drops to $62 before the next paycheck. You don't cancel the transfer. Here's what nobody tells you about being 22 with nothing. When you have no image to protect, no lease payment, no design or anything, no version of yourself that costs money to maintain, you are lighter than you will ever be again. You don't know that yet. Right now it just feels like being broke. But there's a difference between being broke and being trapped. At 22, with a paid-off Corolla and a $100 automatic transfer and $92 on a Tuesday night, you are broke. You are not trapped. That difference is everything. The Corolla starts on the first try every morning. That's enough. But something shifts at 25, not in the account. In the question, you start asking yourself every time you see a car payment. The raise comes on a Thursday, not a big one, $6,000 a year before tax. It lands as $387 extra per month after the government takes its cut. You feel rich for approximately 1 afternoon. Then you open a spreadsheet, $46,000 a year. The investment account sitting at $12,000. The Corolla still in the lot. The AC still only blowing one way. You'd had enough money to fix it for 6 months. You just didn't. That month, a dealership email lands in your inbox. Mazda CX-5. New. $389 a month on a 72-month lease. You open it, you read it twice, then you open a different tab. You type in a compound interest calculator. $389 a month, 10% average annual return, 10 years. The number that comes back is $80,112. You close the dealership email. Not because you can't afford the payment. You can. For the first time in your life, you actually can. You close it because you finally saw the payment for what it actually was, not $389 a month. $80,000 of future time. This is the moment the strategy begins. Not with a big decision, not with a plan written in a notebook, with one tab closed on a Tuesday evening in a studio apartment where the window still faces a brick wall. You move out of the shared apartment that year. Studio. $880 a month, your own kitchen, your own bathroom, a door that locks behind you and the silence on the other side belongs entirely to you. The first night you sit on the floor, the couch hasn't arrived yet, and you eat takeout from a paper bag and you don't hear anyone else's noise through the wall. That silence costs $880 a month. It is worth every dollar. A coworker named Reese invites you to an open house that Sunday. Just to look. Just for fun. On the drive back, she asks if you're thinking about buying. You say not yet. She nods, says the market's crazy right now anyway. You nod back. What you're actually thinking is that the Corolla is paid off, the account is climbing, and every month the gap between what you spend and what you earn is doing something quiet and patient in the background. You don't explain this to Reese. There's no version of that explanation that lands right in a car on the way back from an open house. So you just drive. Here's the first thing stealth wealth actually costs you. Not money, conversation. When you start making different decisions, when you close the dealership email, when you keep driving the paid-off car, you start living inside a logic that most people around you aren't running. And logic that doesn't translate creates distance. Not dramatic distance. Not a falling out. Just a quiet gap that opens between what you're thinking and what you say out loud. That's the first price. And it's smaller than the others. The account hits $15,000 on a Wednesday. You check it once, you close the app, you make dinner. But at 27, something happens that no spreadsheet prepares you for. Her name is Jade, and she has a white Jeep Wrangler and a way of looking at your car that changes everything you thought you understood about this strategy. You've been dating Jade for 8 months. She works in marketing, same salary range as you, smart, funny, the kind of person who remembers small details about things you said 3 weeks ago. She drives a white Jeep Wrangler, leased. She put the first payment down with her year-end bonus, and she was genuinely excited about it. You remember the night she got it. She sent you a photo. The caption was just 3 exclamation marks. You texted back that it looked great. It did look great. One Friday evening, you pick her up for dinner. She walks out of her building. She opens the passenger door of the Corolla and sits down, and she doesn't say anything. But there's a moment. Less than 2 seconds. Her eyes move to the tear in the back seat. The jacket is in the trunk tonight, and then back to the windshield. You see it. She doesn't know. You see it. You pull out of the parking lot, and you talk about where to eat, and the moment passes. But it doesn't disappear. 3 weeks later, you're talking about the future. Not seriously, just the way people do when things are going well. Casually, over dinner. Jade asks if you've thought about getting a new car. Her voice is completely normal. It's a completely normal question, but you hear the thing underneath it. It's not about the car, it's about the image, about what you look like standing next to her. About whether the version of you she's been building in her head matches the version that shows up in a 10-year-old Corolla with a jacket covering the back seat. You don't get defensive. You just say, I'm putting the money somewhere else. She asks where. And you tell her, index funds, Roth IRA, the automatic transfer, the actual number sitting in the account. She's quiet for a moment, not an uncomfortable quiet, a processing quiet. Then she says something you didn't expect. I didn't know you were doing that. She stays, not because of the number, because of what the number meant about how you think. That matters more than people realize when you're 27 sitting across a dinner table trying to explain a paid-off Corolla. But here's what that conversation revealed about the strategy. Stealth wealth is invisible by design. That's the whole point. But invisible to the world also means invisible to the people sitting across the table from you. There's a version of a relationship that can hear, I have $26,000 in index funds and I drive a paid-off Corolla on purpose, and lean in closer. And there's a version that can't. Neither version is wrong. They just want different things. Jade was the first version. You didn't know how rare that was yet. The car wasn't the problem. The car was just the first honest conversation you didn't know you were having. At 28, you changed jobs, new company, new city, new parking lot. And in that new parking lot, you're about to find out that Jade wasn't the only one watching your car. She was just the only one who said something to your face. New company, new city, $62,000 a year. The Corolla finally retired. Not dramatically. Not because you wanted something better, because the repair math stopped working. The mechanic, a guy named Dale, the kind of guy who always gives you the honest number because he thinks you need to save money, told you straight, you're going to spend more fixing it than it's worth. You sold it for $1,200. You bought a 2012 Toyota Camry the same week. $8,000. Cash. The transaction took 45 minutes, including the paperwork. You drove it to work the next morning. Nobody noticed the difference. That was the point. The investment account is at $48,000. You max your Roth IRA for the first time that year, $7,000. Tax-free growth. Forever, you contribute exactly enough to the 401k to capture the full employer match, not a dollar less. Free money is free money. That's the only way to think about it. Total monthly investment, $680. Automated. Gone before you see it. You don't miss it, you never missed it. 3 months in, your manager calls a team meeting. His name is Carver. New promotion, new title. Audi Q7, black, leased, parks in the spot closest to the door. The meeting is about financial wellness. Carver talks about the importance of having 3 months of emergency savings. He uses a slide. The slide has a piggy bank on it. You sit in the third row. You have 17 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account. You write nothing down. You clap when everyone else claps. After the meeting, a coworker named Britta stops you in the hallway. Friendly. The kind of person who knows everyone's name by week 2. She says the meeting was good. You say yeah. She says she's been meaning to start an emergency fund. You say that's a good idea. And you go back to your desk. Not because you don't want to help. Because there's no way to say what you actually know without it becoming something else entirely. So you say that's a good idea. And you go back to your desk. 2 years in, salary $68,000 after a raise and a title change. The Camry has 81,000 miles on it. The investment account is at $53,000. And one morning in the break room, you learn something about how the world actually works when you don't perform for it. You're getting water. You're standing just outside the doorway when you hear it, Britta. Talking to someone you don't know well. Casual. The kind of tone people use when they think no one important is listening. I don't get why they hired him for that role. Have you seen his car? It looks like it's about to fall apart. Not exactly a professional look. A pause. The other person laughs a little. I checked his LinkedIn. Background is fine, but I don't know. He just doesn't have the vibe. You stand there. You let the water run. You fill your bottle. You walk back to your desk. Here's what you don't feel. Not angry, not humiliated. Not the need to walk back in there and say something. What you feel is colder than that. And more useful. Clarity. Britta just showed you her entire evaluation system in 30 seconds. Built on the wrong inputs. She's reading signals that have nothing to do with output, nothing to do with thinking, nothing to do with the actual work. She's reading the car. You don't confront her. You don't change anything about how you show up. You just go to work. 6 months later, Britta gets assigned to your project. Tight deadline. The kind where there's nowhere to hide. You deliver. Clean, on time. Every single week. In the debrief, Britta tells your manager he was the strongest person on the team. She doesn't know you heard her in the break room. She will never know. You never bring it up. Not once. There are 2 ways to get evaluated in any workplace. The first way is fast. It happens in the parking lot before you walk in the door. It takes 4 seconds, and it's almost always wrong. The second way is slow. It happens over months. It's based on output, on what you do when the pressure is real and the deadline is real and the room is watching. The second way is the only one that actually sticks. Stealth wealth forces you to win the second way. Every single time. When you remove the signal, you force the room to look at the work. Most people are terrified of that. You are not. The account crosses $60,000 on a Sunday evening. You check it once. You close the app. The Camry starts on the first try Monday morning. But something is different now. At 31, the number gets large enough that the world starts treating you differently. Not because you changed anything about how you look, but because something inside the system quietly noticed you were there all along. You buy a condo. Not because anyone pressured you, because the math finally made sense and you ran it 3 ways and all 3 ways said the same thing. 2 bedrooms, $162,000. A suburb outside Memphis. The mortgage payment is lower than your old rent. You put 20% down, $32,400. Cash from the savings account. You don't touch the investment accounts. The day you sign the paperwork, the loan officer looks at your file and says, "You have an excellent profile." You say thank you. What she's seeing is a credit score of 809, zero consumer debt, and a savings pattern so consistent it looks algorithmic. What she's not seeing is a 2012 Camry in the parking lot outside. Your neighbor is named Ren. Friendly. Tesla Model Y, white, parked in her spot every evening. One afternoon she sees you loading groceries from the Camry. She asks if you're thinking about getting a new car. You smile, you say not right now. She nods like that's a reasonable answer. It is a reasonable answer. That same year, you need a loan for a small renovation. You walk into the bank, same Camry in the parking lot, same jeans, same nothing to see here appearance. The loan officer pulls up your file. She goes quiet for a moment. Then she turns the screen slightly toward you. "I just want to make sure you're aware. At your asset level, you qualify for our preferred rate. That's 3.4% instead of the standard 6.1. You didn't ask for that. She offered it because the file told a story your appearance never could." You sign the paperwork. You drive home in the Camry. The bank didn't see the car. The bank saw the pattern. And the pattern had been running quietly for 9 years without anyone watching. The investment accounts cross $150,000. Roth IRA, 401k, taxable brokerage, 3 separate buckets growing in 3 separate directions. You track net worth once a month on a Sunday evening. 1 spreadsheet, 10 minutes. You update the numbers, look at the trajectory, close the laptop. No celebrating, no telling anyone. Just the number, the trajectory, and the quiet understanding that the machine is working. There's a company-wide meeting that fall. Carver stands at the front of the room again. This time the slide doesn't have a piggy bank. This time it says, "Workforce restructuring, 15% reduction, effective in 30 days. The room goes very still. You can feel it, the specific weight of people calculating rent, calculating car payments, calculating how many months they can survive without a paycheck. You sit in the same third row. You do different math. 17 months of expenses and savings. $152,000 in investment accounts. A mortgage payment lower than your old rent. You could leave right now if you had to. You don't have to. But knowing that specific quiet knowing, changes everything about how you sit in that room. You're not afraid, and nobody can see that, which means nobody can use it against you. The most powerful thing in a room full of fear is someone who doesn't need to be afraid. And nobody can see that. This is the part nobody puts in the highlight reel. A college friend calls, he's launching a business. He needs partners who believe in it early. The opportunity is real, you can see that. The pitch is solid. The market timing makes sense. He needs $50,000. You have it. And for the first time, the strategy feels like a cage instead of a key. Because saying yes means pulling $50,000 out of a compounding system that took 11 years to build. And saying no means watching someone you've known since you were 19 walk away without the thing he needed from you specifically. You say no. Not easily. Not quickly. You sit with it for 4 days before you call him back. He understands. He says he understands. His voice is even and professional, and you've known him long enough to hear what's underneath it. That call ends and you sit in your apartment for a long time. The account is still at $160,000. The machine is still running, and you understand for the first time that the strategy has a cost that isn't measured in dollars and doesn't show up on any spreadsheet. It shows up in phone calls, in the 4-day gap before you call someone back, in the way a friendship bends slightly and never quite returns to where it was. Net worth $520,000. You say that number to yourself once, quietly, on a Tuesday morning before work. Then you get in the Camry drive. The 2012 Camry has 104,000 miles on it. You replace it with a 2019 Camry. Pre-owned, $14,800, cash. You drive it to work the next day. A coworker in the parking lot says, "Oh, nice, you upgraded." You say thanks. He goes inside. You go inside. Nobody knows you paid cash. Nobody knows the account sitting behind that transaction has $500,000 in it. Nobody knows, And this took years to actually feel true. That the not knowing is the whole point. That year a door opens that you didn't know existed. A contact in the real estate industry mentions a co-investment opportunity. Private deal. Small apartment complex outside Nashville. Minimum $25,000. Accredited investor only. You look up the definition. $1 million in net worth excluding primary residence, or $200,000 in annual income. You don't qualify on income. You pull up your net worth spreadsheet. You qualify on assets. You have qualified for 2 years. Nobody told you this door existed. The system doesn't send you a notification when you cross the threshold. You have to find the door yourself. Here's what that moment actually means. Most personal finance content talks about index funds, 401k matching, emergency funds. That's the right foundation. That's where you start. But above the accredited investor threshold, the instruments change completely. Private equity, private credit, real estate syndications, deals that never appear on any public exchange. These aren't secrets. They're not hidden on purpose. They just require capital to access. And most people spend the capital before they accumulate enough of it to matter. You didn't spend it. You drove the Camry. And now the door is open. You wire $25,000 into the co-investment. You don't tell anyone. You go home, you make dinner, you watch something on TV. The machine is working in more directions now than it ever has. And you are sitting in a 2-bedroom condo in Memphis driving a paid-off Camry and nobody in your life has any idea. Except Jade. Jade knows. And at 38, she's going to say something that makes the whole strategy finally feel like it was worth it. Net worth $1,120,000. You say that number to no one. The Camry has 131,000 miles, still running, still starting on the first try. One Saturday morning, Jade is in the kitchen making coffee. You grab your keys off the counter. She looks up, looks at the keys, looks at you. Then she smiles, not a big smile, just a quiet one, and says, "Still driving that thing?" You say, "Still." She turns back to the coffee. That's it. That's the whole conversation. But you stand there for a second longer than necessary because 11 years ago she sat in the passenger seat of a 10-year-old Corolla and asked if you'd thought about getting a new car. And somewhere between that dinner table and this kitchen, she stopped asking. She stayed anyway. That's not a small thing. That is the whole thing. You sit in a performance review that fall. New manager. Carver left 2 years ago, a quiet layoff, no announcement, and she talks about your trajectory, a promotion, a compensation package worth reviewing together. You listen, you answer every question, and in the back of your mind you are calculating something entirely different. How long you could walk away from this salary and be fine? The answer is, right now. You don't walk away. Not because you're afraid, because you choose to stay. That distinction between having to stay and choosing to stay is the whole story. Every version of you before 32 was staying because you had to. Every version after is staying because you want to. The job didn't change. The number did. And the number changed because of a paid-off Toyota and a $100 automatic transfer and a dealership email you closed on a Tuesday evening 13 years ago. That year a wealth manager calls. Not because you reached out, because your brokerage account crossed a threshold that triggered an automatic flag in their system. The man on the phone uses words like holistic and optimized and tailored. You listen for 6 minutes. Then you ask one question: what's your fee structure? He explains it. You thank him and say you'll think about it. You don't call back. The system found you. Not because you performed for it, not because you drove the right car or wore the right watch. Because the number got large enough that it got noticed on its own. You spent 16 years being invisible. The machine noticed you anyway. That's the strategy working exactly as designed. Net worth $1,700,000. The portfolio generates more in an average year than your salary. Read that again. The money you didn't spend on car payments and lease upgrades and visible signals, that money is now making more money than you make working. The machine became the primary earner. But first, Soren. Soren calls on a Saturday afternoon. You've known him since college. The kind of friend who shows up when things are bad and doesn't need anything from you when things are good. That kind of friend is rare. You know that. He needs $3,000. Medical bill, insurance covered part of it. The rest landed on a card he's already carrying a balance on. He's embarrassed asking. You can hear it in the way he frames it, all the qualifications, all the "I completely understand if you can't." And you know that amount of apologizing means the ask cost him something real. You say yes before he finishes the sentence. No interest, no timeline, whenever. He says thank you in a way that sits in your chest for a moment. But something shifts after that, not immediately, over weeks. The next time you go to lunch, he insists on paying. You let him. He insists again. The time after that, you let him again. And then one afternoon he apologizes, unprompted, in the middle of a conversation about something else entirely, for always being the one who needs something. You tell him that's not true. He nods like he heard you. But he doesn't believe you. And you understand then that the gap didn't open when you said yes. The gap opened years before that. It opened slowly, quietly, in every conversation where you knew something he didn't. In every decision you made that he couldn't see the logic of. In every year, the distance between your two lives grew wider without either of you doing anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. The strategy worked by keeping information asymmetric. You know, the world doesn't. That asymmetry protects you in negotiations. It protects you in the workplace. But asymmetry in a friendship isn't protection. It's distance. And the closer the person, the more the distance costs. This is the price that doesn't show up on any spreadsheet. Not in dollars. In the slow, quiet drift of people who knew you before the number got large. Thanksgiving. You drive the Camry to your parents' house. 4 hours. You listen to a podcast the whole way. Dinner is loud. Good loud. After the food, your brother pulls you aside. He's worried about his mortgage. Rate adjustment coming. He's running numbers and they're not working. You sit with him at the kitchen table. He shows you his spreadsheet. You look at it. And for the first time in a long time, you feel the full weight of the distance. Not because you don't want to help. You do. But the help you can offer requires a conversation that starts somewhere he isn't yet. It requires a language you built slowly, privately, over 2 decades. And that language doesn't have a quick translation. You don't explain everything. You give him 2 concrete things he can do this month. He writes them down. You drive home 4 hours in the dark. Here's the thing about stealth wealth that nobody tells you when you're 22 closing a dealership email on a Tuesday night. It works. The math is real. The compounding is real. The freedom is real. But freedom is not the same as connection. And the further you travel from where you started, financially, mentally, in terms of what you understand about how money actually moves, the harder it becomes to bring people with you. Not because you don't want to. Because it's hard to explain a decision someone never had to make. You pull into your driveway at 11:15 p.m. The Camry goes into the garage. Jade is already asleep. You sit in the dark for a moment. $1,700,000. A paid-off condo. A portfolio generating passive income. A job you choose to keep. A woman in the kitchen who said still and meant it. And a brother 4 hours away who is worried about his mortgage. And Soren, who insists on paying for lunch now. All of it true at the same time. The strategy worked. You just didn't know it would feel like this. There is no ending to this story. Not a clean one. The machine keeps running. The number keeps climbing. The Camry keeps starting on the first try every morning. And somewhere across town, in a parking lot you'll never see, someone is signing their first lease agreement. The paper is fresh. The ink is barely dry. They take a photo of the car before they drive it off the lot. They post it before they leave the dealership. 47 likes in the first hour. Nobody tells them what the photo costs. Not because they don't know, because the likes are real right now. And the cost doesn't show up until later. It always shows up later.